Okay, so to finish up, we are going to talk about how cognition is involved in classical and operant conditioning, how different types of learning show cognition, and then observational learning. I'm hoping this will take about 10 minutes or so. So the first slide on here, we've already gone over this stuff, so we don't worry about it. So how about with, the argument has always been with behaviorists that there's no cognition, okay? There's no thought involved in conditioning. It is just something that happens automatically. That's not the case. With some types of, with some classical and operant conditioning, it is, but there is a thought process involved. For instance, and we're not going to get too deep into this, there's what's called Rescorla's contingency model, which basically shows that things are easier conditioned in classical conditioning if the associations, if it is more predictable. So if one thing predicts something better than another thing, it's easier to classically condition the thing that is more predictable, which shows that there is some sort of choice, there's a thought process involved. In operant conditioning, and I don't have this on here, but the fact that animals will respond more frequently when it is an interval schedule, meaning when there's time involved, they will start to show the response more frequently the closer it gets to the reward, shows that there is an expectation of a reward there. Okay, they understand the time frame, and they understand that when it gets closer to the time that there is even though it's based on time, somehow their actions play a role in it. The other evidence for cognition is what is called latent learning, and then insight learning. So, latent, we talked about latent content in dreams, which is the hidden meaning of dreams. All right, latent means hidden. Okay, so latent learning is learning that is not displayed, that we don't show that we have this learning until there is some sort of reinforcement for it. Famous study that was done by Edward Tolman, where he put rats in a maze with no reward at the end of the maze. And what he found was would the rats would just wander around the maze, but they didn't have a purpose. But when he put a reward at the end of the maze, right, after the rats had just wandered around the maze for a bit, okay, when there was a reward at the end of the maze, he found that the rats were easily able to solve the maze. They were able to get through it very, very quickly. All right, but they didn't show this until there was a reward. This is what is called a cognitive map. All right, cognitive maps, where we automatically form mental maps of our environment. We oftentimes don't need to use them, all right, until there is some sort of reason to, though. You don't really think about walking around the school, okay? You just kind of are on autopilot, but if somebody asks you how to get from one place to another, most of the time you would probably be able to explain how to get there. So latent learning that is hidden until there is some sort of reward. I always think of like trivia, like just random information that you just have in your brain. You don't use it until all of a sudden you get asked a trivia question. You said, boom, boom, I actually do know that. So latent learning that is hidden until there is some reward. And then a cognitive map, right, is a mental representation of our environment that we automatically form. And just in case anybody wanted to check and see, all right, here is the map of Ardrey-Kell. So you could check your map against this map and see how good you were at drawing the layout of Ardrey-Kell. Even most people that I saw who weren't sure about themselves were able to do it relatively well. All right, so that's the reward, that the map of the your knowledge of it doesn't come out until there is really a reason for it. The other type of learning that shows that there is some sort of cognition involved is what is called insight learning. Insight learning is just the aha moment. Okay, it is when there's no real reward, okay? But you can't figure out the solution to a problem, thinking, all right, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, the solution just comes to you. I think of most with like songs, you can't remember a song that you're trying to think of, and then out of the blue, it just comes to you and you blurt out what the song was. Famous experiment that was done with this by Wolfgang Kohler with chimpanzees. He hung bananas from up high and gave them some different tools to use, but he didn't show them how to use it. The chimpanzees just kind of wandered around trying to get the bananas. Eventually, though, the solution came to them that they could either climb up onto these boxes or they could put these pipes together to make something tall enough to get bananas. Okay, so insight is just the aha moment. All right, if you want to watch, I have a couple of videos on here. If you want to watch this, you can watch it on the copy of the PowerPoint. All right, finally, observational learning. Okay, this is we are moving away from the behaviorists. All right, and this falls into what is called the social cognitive perspective. Observational learning is the idea that what's also called social learning, that we can learn by observing others. The process of doing this is called modeling. Okay, the process of observing and imitating other people. Um, and it shows that reinforcement is not necessary. All right, reinforcement is not necessary for learning. Even animals, they have found, will just automatically imitate people that are older than them. It does show that there is cognition involved because you're making the choice to observe and to imitate others' behavior. Oftentimes it is, sometimes it's things that we know that we shouldn't do. Okay, imitating bad behavior, somebody that maybe you think is cool or whatnot when you're a little kid, and you see them doing something you know that you shouldn't do, maybe cussing or whatnot, but all right, they're cool, and so you make the choice to imitate them. Whereas a behaviorist would say, well, no, you wouldn't do that because you would know that you would get punished. Well, not always. Okay, they found about as young as 2.5, we can start to imitate. This was studied by the father of the social cognitive perspective, guy named Albert Bandura. He is famous for what is called the Bobo doll experiment. What he wanted to see was if aggression could be learned through observation. And so what he did was he had children, age 4, 5, 6 or so, observe adults being aggressive toward this, whatever these things are called, roly polies or whatnot, being aggressive toward this clown doll, what he called a Bobo doll, um, either being aggressive or not being aggressive. And when he put the children in the room with the Bobo doll without the adult, he found that the children were much acted much more aggressively towards it than the children who did not observe the adult being aggressive towards it. He found that the children were actually more aggressive to it than the adults had been. They were more likely to use weapons against it. But there wasn't any reinforcement or anything. They simply had just watched an adult be aggressive towards it. They have found that And here's a video. You can watch that on your own. They have found that we are biologically predisposed to imitate. In our frontal lobe, we have what are called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons that they fire when we observe other people. These mirror neurons are what allow for us to imitate and allow for us to feel empathy, which is being able to feel what somebody else is feeling. An example of this is yawning, okay, where they say yawns are contagious. Okay, that is true. When we yawn, we're imitating somebody else, but we are also basically saying to them, I gotcha, I'm tired too. We automate the chameleon effect is this we naturally imitate other people that we're talking to. If you're talking to somebody and they cross their arms, you're more likely to cross your arms as well. There's the phrase imitation is the highest form of flattery. That's one way that we show solidarity with other people. They have found that imitation can be positive and negative, as we said. When we observe somebody displaying pro-social behavior, which is positive constructive behavior, we are more likely to show that type of behavior as well. But unfortunately, it works in the opposite way when we view somebody, such as in the Bobo doll experiment, when we view somebody displaying antisocial behavior, we are more likely to imitate antisocial behavior as well, even if we don't totally recognize that we are doing it. Okay? All right, so that is it. That was 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Another video, it's on there. Okay, and then crash course. So there you go.